and welcome to Stop Now. I'm Nate, and if you're watching this video, then you already know the topic of discussion. This is part 3 of our excellent conversation with the founder of the Black Nonbelievers, Mandisa Thomas. We had a great multifaceted conversation with Mandisa that touched on a lot of different subjects, from race to politics, spirituality, faith, organized religion, the historical context of religion. And of course, JK and I also got into the discussion of atheism and spirituality. So it's a great discussion. It's very nuanced, and I'm glad that you chose to watch part 3. So without any further ado, here is the third part of our conversation with Mandisa Thomas.
But
not even the grandparents. Like, we're seeing active politicians who want to take it back, who want to run that back. Walter, we're seeing actively in real time.
I think a lot of those people are honestly actors for the most part, because they're just trying to get up, because those people are just maniacally.
Well, they're actors, but there's people who want, like, it's the audience. You know what I mean? It's like the chicken and the egg. Did Trump cause this, or is Trump playing to a base? Did DeSantis cause this, or is DeSantis playing to a base? So it's like, I don't believe a lot of what these politicians say they believe, but somebody's buying it, and that's the part that I think is concerning.
Oh yeah,
so I want to Walter, I want to address. I want to bring up something really quick, right? So JFK as a president, there was a point in time before he became a proponent for civil rights that Dr. Martin Luther King, was actually telling President Kennedy about the challenges that were faced, and he actually didn't believe them until the demonstrations in Birmingham were televised, when the police were turning the hoses and the dogs on the protesters, on the Black protesters and the marchers. So he actually didn't believe it until he saw it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a problem for many of us, right? Many of us do not tend to get involved or care until either something affects us closely, personally, or we have to see it in order to believe it. Now, granted, I'm glad that it forced that action. But remember that for many years, Blacks were barred. We were, our ancestors were, barred from voting. We were not allowed to take part in the voting process, whether it was through trickery and through all sorts of means, which is why it is important. Black history is important in this country because people need to know the lengths that these institutions took in order to prevent people from voting. So yes, that is a huge exercise of our civic duty. It is important that we do get out, and vote, and also, if possible, run for, get involved in your local politics, run for local offices. Many people, it's not sexy work. Most of that stuff is boring as hell, and change is also something that is not quick. We're conditioned to want things to improve rapidly, but that isn't what, so it starts with talking, it starts with the dialogue, but yes, it should progress into us, getting out and exercising our civic rights, our civic duties, also getting involved in community organizations, and also generally socializing and networking with people. All of those things make a huge difference. They really do. And it takes, even if it's the smallest step, getting out there in some small way does make a difference, because there are a lot of people who still think that voting doesn't matter, and it does. And also, again, but talking and communicating with each other really is one of the first steps that should be taken if we really want to see, and in order for things to change the way we need to see them.
Yeah, we could have we'd be on the bridge right now to having universal health care if certain votes happened a certain way. So,
I know, yeah.
Voting does definitely matter. And talking about Bernie Sanders and his presidential run is like, yes, voting really matters. We're the only first world country to not have universal health care, which if you look into that, that affects people who are in the middle and working class a lot more. So yeah,
absolutely.
If you care about people who've been disadvantaged for a long time, you might want to support that. It is a very difficult thing because you can't, because like Nate mentioned, there are people still the screaming racist, like people. I remember at high level conversations when I was covering politics a lot closer, people have like, did Trump create this? No, Trump didn't create them. These people have always been around. Trump just stood there and was like testing what could get him, well, in a wrestling term, a pop, and he was like, oh, I can say things about Mexican people and people love it. Yeah, they're cheering for me. Yeah, I'm just gonna keep doing this and doing the bigotry, and because it gets me a reaction. And he just kept going and going and going with that. And these people are still around. You can go into the Bible Belt and find these people. We talked about Mississippi. Yeah, that's a place where you can find a lot of these people. But the problem is that they're the way the demographics are going and the way more importantly, the way people's thoughts are going, they are on the last legs of being able to win anything nationally. So they're scared. It's like, what's going to happen to us? It's like, maybe you should think about why you're scared, what happens to you if you can't win an election, because that's kind of what people have been saying about this whole bigotry going back all the way to the Native Americans when they were here and now they're not here for a lot of the reasons. So the way the Chinese were treated when they were building the
railroads,
and then got kicked out. The Japanese were in internment camps and then slavery. It's like, maybe you should think about why it is you're afraid and address those reasons for fear. Or you think now everyone's just going to throw you into a prison camp because you can't win election? That's not what anyone is advocating for. If people were advocating for that, we would be like, whoa, let's not do that. That's not the way to fix a problem. That's creating another problem. And it's a very difficult conversation because people are more intertwined with their religion than they are with what they see, and that's a thing coming from a philosophical background. It's like, why? Just that question comes up a lot. It's like, why? Like you see, you believe this, therefore why? It's like, because it's in the Bible. It's like, okay, critically think why, and they don't like answer that. Why can't women be pastors? Why can't women do this? Like, that's a question that pisses off a lot of people. Almost like, because back in high school I was really interested in learning about different denominations, and was like, I always ask this question, and they would always beat it around, but it's because it's better suited for this. Like, why though? But this is the biggest position. Why can't a woman do this? Like, they're better at something. Says who? Who says who? Like, why are you saying all men and women are the same? That question is the one that pisses them off the most. And I still like bringing it up today because it's just a bunch of you can't make. There's no logical defense for it other than that's what we do. And it's like, why do you do that? To keep women from positions of power. Stuff like that to me has always been interesting, and just watching people not be able to defend it at all in a logical manner. So I don't know how we really connect with people who are that deep into religion. I'm not even sure we have to anymore, since the country is becoming less religious every year. So I don't know.
The problem is when the fear mongers and those who are anti-intellectual are voted into public office. When they start running for office and they start trying to pass these bills that limit our education knowledge, that limit reproductive justice, that limit or even eliminate them. These are where the problems come when these folks are representing us. And that is where, like you said, the actions come in, where we have to stand up against that, because there are,
especially when they've got the courts in their favor. They've got districts that have been redrawn to be in their favor. It's like they're smaller. Like there's less of people that think like that, but
gerrymandering is a big problem.
They've got a lot of advantages on the board.
When they are put in positions of power that affect multitudes of people, that's when it becomes a huge problem. And that is when, yes, we have to fight back against that. And there is a lot of fear mongering. There's a lot of propaganda, and propaganda is nothing new. However, as like I said before, as we have more access to information, and as we advance, the need to blindly follow something should go away. But there are a lot of people who are invested in the ignorance of others. And that definitely is a problem. It invokes religion. Many religions and religious denominations tend to invoke, this fear. They invoke this guilt. They invoke, not questioning simply for the sake of following. And that is definitely a problem, because that spills over into our everyday lives. That spills over into how we don't question other things. But it's also interesting, on the contrary, that there are people who will question everything else about society. They will question what ingredients are in their food, but when it comes to the belief in God, they won't question that. That's a hard stop. So it's always very interesting to see how that works. So, and then people should be questioned on that. Like, well, why? Why is it that there is a hard stop? There's you have a critical thought about all these different things, but when it comes to this, it stops for you. So, and people, and it would be great if people were honest about that, but there are people who are still also afraid to be vulnerable. People don't want to not look like they don't have the answers. And that is often a huge problem, because people will come with these preconceived notions and not willing to learn. But you have to be willing to learn, and you have to be willing to come to the table knowing that you're going to make mistakes, or that that there were some things that you were incorrect about before. But once new and valid information is presented, then you have an obligation as a human being to take that into consideration and to draw a different conclusion. And that is hard for a lot of people.
It's the thing that always makes me laugh and makes me smile, Mandisa, is for all of these, and it's funny how we started talking today about the intersection between religion and politics, and that's kind of where we've ended up, is when you get a lot of these politicians who claim to be Christians or claim to be religious or claim to be spiritual, and their views, their opinions, like if Jesus were actually here, they wouldn't be rocking with Jesus. Jesus would be one of the people they're like, we got to kick out of the country because he's a socialist and he's radical.
Who crucified him? Correct. There are, and that is where they rely on people's ignorance to get them over. They're relying on people saying, well, that's not what Jesus would have done. Jesus would want, universal health care. Jesus would want, access to reproductive care. Jesus would want, as Jesus was, in the Bible, right? Jesus would want all of these things. But yes, there are, and unfortunately, because the Bible and Christianity is so subject to interpretation, because it is not a book that is based on evidence. People can sort of take it with, people take some good things from it, and people take some very bad things and apply some very bad things that do inhibit the human rights of others. And it is so unfortunate that that there are folks who will still definitely blindly follow these people. And that is where it is important that we can continue to speak up.
I never thought like this was going to be so interesting and passionate group.
Was it worth the 2-year wait, JK?
Yes, absolutely. And it's been like more than an hour, and we continue to do it since again, Walter got woken up from the bed, and it is his topic of interest as well, philosophy and religion. So, Mandisa, before we wrap up, your final thoughts and comments, because modern day slavery still exists, and I just want to conclude my thought with that. Maybe that will interest Krishna to bring in his views in the next episode with his conversation. Because just like the Bible, right, how they said like you can have slaves for 6 years and then sell them off So those stories, like, again, I heard like in the ACA, like Austin Community of Atheists. So they talk about these things. Similar to it, like using the visa program, they are bringing in people. I'm correlating it. Like, so one victim said this story to me, and we are being held as slaves like for 6 years, and then like we are let go of it. So that kind of practice is still continues. So that is where like the religion, the concept of Christianity, I don't know, that is going to be more dominant. And that was there like before, but now it is as an undercurrent, like a subtle way, like in a soft manner, they are trying to deal with it. I don't know how far you have faced discrimination being an atheist as a non-believer, or if, for example, if you are other believers, right? So Hindus or Muslims, do they face discrimination in America?
I think, as like I said, as a student of history, and especially like in particular in Black history, right? So when we look at the transatlantic slave trade and how back then it was the intention for the African captives and their descendants to be enslaved for life. It was not supposed to be for 6 years. Technically today, we are still supposed to be enslaved as Black people. However, as time changed and we look at the systems of racism and injustice, this is where prisons became more popular and profitable. So we look at the prison industrial complex and how easy it was for Black people to be more incarcerated, and especially in this country. And there is definitely still, a slave, or enslaved mentality. More of it's more mental now, because when you can get a person's mind, you can definitely diminish or enslave their bodies. So it is going to be up to us to continue to liberate ourselves from the fundamentals and indoctrinations of things, and actually liberate ourselves from being okay with the mistreatment of human beings outright, for exploitation. And like Walter was saying before, we are advocates of sex work. We are advocates of liberation, and also doing so where the person who is working for it benefits, rather than that they're not being pimped. Because in a lot of ways, we are being pimped, not just sexually, but in other ways. So being able to be more self-sufficient and being more communal-minded is going to help combat this. And it starts with an understanding of these institutions and how they have been just perpetuated over the years. And now it's to the point where we're doing it without even realizing that we're doing it. So it's going to take a better understanding of the history and the institutional factors in order for us to get to a point where, we can recognize these things, recognize they are wrong, and try and definitely do our best to do better, and making sure that we are treating each other better, that things are more equitable across the board, because there are some of us who did not have those opportunities like others, and dismantling so many institutions of oppression that is going to take, I'm not even sure if it will. I mean, we're seeing some things happen in our lifetime that we never thought. But really, really unpacking that and dismantling those systems of oppression where there are a few people who are living so much better than your masses, and definitely, and I'm not, some people might call me a communist, but a more equitable distribution of wealth and resources is going to make a huge impact on how things change for the world, and so that people do not have to be enslaved physically or mentally in any way. So it's a lot. It's a whole lot to, you know, I know that we could probably talk on this for days and weeks, but it's definitely going to be more of what we put into practice and the actions that we take.
Yeah, and it's the kind of thing, Mandisa, where I believe it was Walter who brought up somebody like Kyrie Irving earlier. And like, I love the brother as a player, but I feel like Kyrie is one of those cats that is asking good questions, but that's all he does. He doesn't follow up and do research and educate himself. He's just like, why is this like this? Is it because, and it feels like just you're asking questions, and I don't know if it's to be a provocateur, if it's to be somebody that is, because I don't genuinely believe that he's anti-Semitic or that he has that hate in his heart. You know, I could be wrong, but it feels like somebody that took like one course in college. And they're like,
and now they think they know everything.
Yes, they think they know everything. And they're like, let me ask you this. And it's like, but Kyrie, you're not doing any of the work to follow up that question.
Right. Yes. I was going to say, there's a sense of intellectual laziness that comes along with that. And
I mean, the documentary, I had to watch that documentary, and I was like, this is not, I don't know how you sit through this and can believe this. Like, it was basically saying Jewish individuals were started and controlled the transatlantic slaves. It's like, take 5 seconds to just research that. That's not remotely accurate. Like that's
right.
Is,
there are like we can there were, like, let's say during the Holocaust, for example, there were some Jews who had a hand in, you know, causing harm in other Jews, but that was because of the circumstances, right? Just like during the transatlantic slave trade, many of the tribal or the chiefs in Africa did sell some of the, you know, they're enslaved into, you know, to the Europeans, right? So there is, you know, it is important to do more research than to just outright say, well, this documentary says this happened and that was it. That's never the case. Education is continual. And like I said, sometimes it brings us to information that may be uncomfortable for us. And I say that as Black folks, right? You know, as you know, because we are not totally innocent in this, you know, even though institutionally there's a lot against us, but individually there are responsibilities and there's an accountabilities that we have, and we have to be honest about that. And yes, what I think Kyrie Irving in particular did was very, very irresponsible. It was very irresponsible for him to simply, and you know, there are groups of people like the Hebrew Israelites and the Christians who love to have certain noted names represent them. So, and that might, they think that will help them in some way, and in a lot of ways it has, but also that can cause harm to a lot of people. And so, yes, what he did was extremely, and I don't know, I don't like to downplay athletes as just being simple, like simpletons, or however.
But it's like you said, like he's also somebody that believes in flat Earth. He's also somebody who didn't play half of the season because of the vaccine. So he's
that is a problem. That is a problem.
I don't have a problem saying that. I think he's a bit of an intellectual lightweight, and because it took him, when we look at that situation, it took the NBA didn't want to touch it. Adam Silver, the NBA commissioner, is actually Jewish. He didn't want to touch it because he was afraid of the backlash that he would get because of the perception that everyone was agreeing with Kyrie Irving. The Nets had to beg him and say, can you please apologize? Please apologize. Please apologize.
Right.
He didn't want to do it. They were like, come on, can you please come? It's been 2 days. We've been corrected on this twice. Please apologize. Then it didn't take until they were like, okay, then you're suspended.
Yeah, there had to be consequences.
You're suspended without pay. And so you got to do this, and this. You got to talk to Jewish leaders. You got to do this, and this. Talk to the owner, talk to the GM before you can come back. Then he was like, then he probably had his PR people like write an apology letter, which he probably didn't even really mean. But then he comes back, and then the Nets were like, we're done with this. We're just going to trade you, please.
Yeah. If they asked him to apologize, then that probably would have been, he could have avoided all of that. You know, that is, people don't realize that, you know, and it's often the ego and pride of so many people right? There are things that can be better resolved. Misunderstandings can be better resolved with simple apologies and acknowledgement of, okay, well, I wasn't aware of this.
Right.
I will make better attempts to, distribute more accurate information. And I don't want to watch that documentary because there's a lot of propaganda, a lot of things that make people, and there is, I will say for a lot of Black folks, there is a misguided attempt to take back the narrative of, Black positivity, right? Because it's been instilled in us for so long that Black is ugly, that Black folks didn't accomplish much. And we know now that isn't true, but to the extent that people are romanticizing that can be a problem. It can be very much a problem when you're saying, well, this group of people was bad, just to simply make us look good. That's never going to be good. That's never going to have a good outcome.
That's been like Deshaun Jackson. I feel passionate because I'm a big sports fan, and I hear a lot of these things. When Deshaun Jackson a couple of years ago basically falsely attributed a quote to Hitler, and no, the NFL didn't want to suspend. It's like there's a fear of punishing. I don't like saying colors, so I was dark melanated individuals when it comes to saying stuff that is bigoted. And I don't know why that is. It's like, what this thing is very problematic, and it's almost always pointed towards Jewish individuals for some reason.
And I think part of that, Walter, is the optics of I'm not going to say all, but like a good percentage of the owners are Jewish men. And I think there's something, and I don't know, I'm Kyrie now. I'm throwing out a question without an answer on the spot. But I think there is something to the power dynamic of the owner and the player. And I feel like Adam Silver in particular, I feel like Adam Silver overcorrects because he doesn't want to appear to be singling out Kyrie, but by doing that, he lets Kyrie off the hook.
Oh yeah. The NBA show came in immediately because like they did with the Suns owner. Like they were like, no.
When Myers Leonard played for the Miami Heat, said something anti-Semitic, Myers Leonard was gone in 2 days. And I mean, granted, Myers Leonard is not as good a player as Kyrie Irving. That plays into it as well. But I feel like it was easier for them to dismiss the white guy that said the anti-Semitic thing versus the Black guy that says it.
Yeah, like Adam Silver, I don't think he really said much at all about it. And I do think that's, the way I look at things, a lot of people don't, is like, again, this is from a philosophy background. What is right and what is wrong? Like, just take anything out of that. Like, it doesn't matter what you look like, where you come from. It's like, is the thing that you an issue or is it not an? If it's an issue, we need to correct it. And the optics, there's a lot of optics, still people that would come at me for like, did you watch the documentary? It's like, yeah, I watched the documentary. Would you like me to talk about the documentary? And blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, then I even brought up the Suns owner who was on tape saying misogynist.
Robert Silver.
Yeah, and it was like I brought the NBA and Force came out against them. The only people in the NBA that came out and talked, no active players were like Kyrie can't do that. It was people like Reggie Miller, retired players like Mark Jackson, can't do this. And the NBA was like dead silent. People went after Reggie Miller for saying maybe we should be better than being bigoted. I'm like,
right.
People like, how are you in the same breath? Like, and you guys just went after Kanye because of the White Lives Matter shirt, and that's actually a hate group that's of the Poverty Law Center, and you don't see why we should just be against all intersexual bigotry. Like that's a problem I had with people that wanted to come at me and defend Kyrie specifically. I was like, he was saying things that Nazis would say. Like he was promoting that. He was like, well, he wasn't directly saying them. He was like, just go look at the documentary. I agree with this. He was like, then he later says like, I don't agree with all of it. I agree with someone's like,
yes,
parts. Like, you want to tell me which parts? Because it was all nonsense.
You just got to open your mind, Walter, and see what he's seeing on the footage, Walter. It is very much like first semester of like a humanities class response from Kyrie.
I mean, philosophy is the humanities. I don't even know if that's. I don't know. I don't think that's even a person. That might be high school.
Yes, the imbalance of, because again, looking at the history of how Black folks are treated in the media, and also being among the first to be, to be punished or penalized for anything, doesn't mean that Kyrie Irving is free from responsibility.
Yes.
He should have, there are a lot of things that he should have, I agree that it was completely irresponsible for him to have done that. And again, people in the public eye do have a responsibility to at least distribute accurate information and to be responsible with the information they put out, and also set an example for accountability.
Yes.
If you share something half-assed and it's like, well, and he should have also prefaced it with, well, this is my personal belief. I do not represent, the NBA or my team or something like that. But unfortunately, some of these athletes have been able to get away with these things for years, and there have been no consequences, or certain athletes. And like you said, if they bring in a certain number of dollars, then of course there might be some, there might be some need to excuse them. It's like, no, I mean, I can understand that a person is valuable in that way, but if they are valuable in that way, then there needs to definitely be some hardline conversations as to, these are things that you should not be doing. And we can also look at a sense of even male privilege with that. And because he's a basketball player who may bring in a certain amount of revenue for what have you, there are some people who, who they've been able to get away with it. And it's like, no, they shouldn't. They should not be able to get away with that. So
with great power, there must also come great responsibility.
Absolutely there is. And, it's also in, how we handle that. And it doesn't mean that he has to be perfect, right? It really doesn't.
No.
But, there still needs to be, he should have been way more responsible when it came to that. So I don't feel bad for what, the consequences of what he did. I don't. I certainly do not. I don't defend it, and so I really think that he should have. First of all, he shouldn't have. If he was going to tweet that or share it, he really should have done so in a more responsible way. And also express that, these are my views. If you want to take a look at it, make a conclusion for yourself.
Yeah.
But to actually share it as if it's truth, that can be an issue, because that's what we take issue with religious people for doing. So yeah.
And then, like you said, once you realize that you have hurt people, apologize. And I think that's something that has always been an issue for men in particular, but it seems even more so in the post-Trump era, where you had a dude that was the leader of the free world that never apologized for anything. But I'm going to apologize to JK right now, because I know we're going on 2 hours here, and JK has a strict time limit for these episodes, but we definitely want to have you back, Mandisa, for a part 2 of this conversation. Again, we've been speaking with Mandisa Thomas, president and founder of the Black Nonbelievers Incorporated. Mandisa, any final thoughts or any social media plugs? Where can people find you to learn more about your organization and the work that you do?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, you can visit our website at blacknonbelievers.org. We are on Facebook at Black Nonbelievers. We're on Instagram at B Nonbelievers Inc. We are on Twitter at B Nonbelievers. The B and the N are capitalized. And we're on LinkedIn at Black Nonbelievers. And also we are a 501c3 organization. So if you'd like to support the work that we do, you can make a donation. We do depend on that to continue our outreach and our engagement and the support for our members, as well as the ability to allow people to learn more about our position and the work we do. So thank you once again for having me. We're also on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel. We have a show called In the Cut that airs every first and third Saturday of each of the month. So we air twice a month. Our YouTube channel is Black Nonbelievers Inc. So please do check it out.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And while you are subscribing to the Black Nonbelievers YouTube channel, check out the Stop Now YouTube channel. You can also find out more information about the Stop Now organization at stop-now.org. If you want to be a volunteer, if you want to support financially, we've got a shop. I think JK's got some merch out here on these streets. But yes, we've had a great conversation with Mandisa Thomas. Want to thank Walter, Amer, Krishna, and JK for joining us this week, and we will do it again next week. So thank you for watching. And in the words of JK, bye for now.